Hi, Perrin. Hi, Alden. Here we are on another Daddy Cast. This one's about ancient history. Now, the dishwasher's running in the background. We'll have to see how noisy that is. You'll also notice you should get the book out. It's this one. Because when I tried to scan the pages for this Daddy Cast, not all of each page was able to be on there. So some of it's cut off. So you'll get a fuller picture if you look in your book. All right, so this page we're learning about is the first towns. Talks about the Syrian deserts. A nice map here. All right, let's read it. The first towns. Around 8000 BC, people in the Levant, that's kind of the area of Israel and Jordan and Lebanon, that strip of land along here. See, it's got the word Levant. All right. Around 8000 BC, people in the Levant made one of the most important discoveries in history. They learned how to, I think it's supposed to say cultivate. There's a missing word. They learned how to cultivate wild grains such as wheat and barley. This was the beginning of farming, and it meant that people could live in one place that was close to their crops. As a result, permanent settlements were built here and throughout the Fertile Crescent. That is the arc of fertile land that stretched from southern Levant, down here kind of, to Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf. You guys have done this on your map. It's the part that's the greenest here. Might not be so green anymore. The first farmers built villages and later walled towns such as Jericho. That should be on here somewhere. Maybe it's not. Oh yeah, Jericho. Such as Jericho and KAofAW. That sounds like Turkey. Here we go. KAofAW. In towns, not everyone was a farmer. Townspeople learned new skills such as making pottery and smelting copper and began to trade. This helped their towns prosper and expand. All right, let's take this map from the top left down through the bottom right. So up here, Anatolia, that is what today we know of as Turkey. Here's a town called KAofAW. And here is KAofAW. KAofAW. The mud brick buildings of KAofAW housed 6,000 people between 6,700 and 5,700 BC. So now that's almost 8,700. It's almost 8,000 to 9,000 years ago from now. Many of the houses were decorated with wall paintings and sculptures. Look how they have, let's see. They have the poles through the roof and the ladders. I think we read about this town in one of our other books. All right. They enter their houses through the roofs. Oh, look, here's Tarsus, remember? When Jonah tried to go to Tarsus instead of Nineveh. Mersine. Here's the island of Cyprus. Philia. Karakitia. Here's Ugarit. All right. The Taurus Mountains. Up here, farmers tending their sheep. And we'll just scroll across like this. All right. Here's a picture of people growing crops. Grains were first cultivated in the Levant around 8000 BC. Here is a picture of weaving textiles from flax, which is a plant. So they would weave it and turn it into cloth. Here is fishing. Fishermen on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers built boats out of reeds and rushes to catch the plentiful fish. All right, let's run down here to Jericho. Jericho, the first permanent settlement in Jericho was built in 8500 BC. By 8000 BC, it was a walled city, housing at least 1,500 people. It actually had 2 walls around it. All right, and let's go over here Yanik Tepe, Lake Urmia. All right, here's a picture that says is pottery. Potters in Hasuna learned how to fire pottery in a kiln around 6000 BC. This part's kind of chopped off. You can look at it better in your book. Smelting copper. Smelting copper to make weapons and tools reached southern Mesopotamia before 4000 BC. Now remember, we just read about how they used tin with copper later on to make bronze, which is a stronger metal, can make better tools and weapons. All right, that's a strange name, Chogamami. Here we have a picture of irrigating the land. Farmers began building canals and irrigation ditches in Mesopotamia around 5500 BC. Local industries, a pottery industry that used local clay built up in Susa and the nearby towns in 4000 BC. And I think Susa was the city that Queen Esther lived in with King Xerxes. We'll have to check the Bible on that one. You could look it up in your proofreading exercises, parents, since that's from the book of Esther. Eridu, look at this town, Eridu. Eridu is the oldest town in southern Mesopotamia. It had a population of around 5,000 people in 4000 BC. It traded pottery and other goods with Arabia. All right, let's see. Oh, let's do this one up here because we missed it. The development of farming. The first people were hunter-gatherers who found food by killing wild animals and collecting wild fruits, nuts, and grains. In the Levant, wild crops were so plentiful that by around 10,000 BC, people did not need to move around in order to find food. Slowly, they learned how to plant and grow wild grains so that the crops would produce more food and be easier to harvest. Early farmers domesticated sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle, and by 6000 BC, they could feed a large, settled urban population. Oh, and I missed this one because it's kind of cut off here, but I will read it to you, and you can look at the picture better in your book. It has a picture of a temple. Temples. The peoples of southern Mesopotamia built large temples and grain storehouses in Uruk and other towns after 5000 BC. All right. I'm not going to read you the timeline on the side. You guys can check that out in the book. Now, let's move on to the next page. Zoom out a little bit. This is about Mesopotamia. Okay, so over here is the Levant. This would be the Jordan River, the Dead Sea, and here is what would be Israel and Lebanon, and on this side now is Jordan. I think in the Bible times it would be like Edom and Aram and stuff. The Philistines would have been along the coast. This is Egypt down here. All right, so Anatolia, that was Turkey, remember? The island of Cyprus. Okay, let's read about Mesopotamia, though. That's this area over here. So, from 4300 BC on, a series of great cities and empires dominated the plains of Mesopotamia, the region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. So all of this area, the map is kind of messed up because of the scanning. Look in your book. Most of the cities contained around 5,000 people, although Uruk had 50,000 inhabitants at its peak. Food for everyone was grown in the surrounding fields and stored in the temples, and from there it was given out to the people or traded for raw materials that could not be found locally. In order to keep records of all these transactions, priests in the cities of Sumer developed a system of record keeping using pictures to represent different words. This was the world's first system of writing, and it developed into the cuneiform script. The Sumerians also wrote out the first set of laws and invented the wheel, one of the most important inventions in human history. All right, let's zoom in a little bit and take a look at some of the things on this map. So here is the town of Ebla, or city, the wheel. The Sumerians invented the wheel, and its use spread throughout the region. It was used to make clay pots and later used for chariots and wagons. So I think the wheel for clay pots would be something that you would spin it around to help you make the round pots. The Assyrian kingdom. This alabaster figure was found at Shubat Enlil, the Assyrian capital, built by King Shamshi Abad. He ruled between 1813 and 1781 BC. Plentiful river. Fishermen built boats from reeds to fish in Mesopotamia's rivers and lakes. Look at that. Interesting. They have to stand on it like that. That's tricky. Okay, so here's the Mesopotamia between the rivers. This one is kind of messed up, but this is the Tigris River going all the way up here to down here. It connects off your map. And here is the Euphrates River. Okay, here's the town of Hamazi. Here are farmers plowing with oxen. That would have been an important invention. There's a picture of a trading boat on the Euphrates, but it is not on this picture. You have to look in your book. Chariot warfare. You guys remember about reading about chariot warfare in some of our Bible stories in 2 Kings? Chariot warfare. The Sumerians were fierce fighters using four-wheeled chariots to attack their many enemies. All right. Oops. Went too far. Okay, there's a very important part that's missing on your page. It has a picture of a stone stele, a big stone tablet standing up out of the ground. And it says, the lawmaker. Hammurabi, king of Babylon, wrote a set of laws for his empire. He had the laws engraved on a stela, or a stone pillar. So look at that in your book. And then right next to it, keeping records. Temple priests kept records of trade, business, and property on clay tablets using simple picture writing. Here we have, oops, I did it again. Temple ziggurats. Every Sumerian city had a temple. The temple in Ur consisted of several platforms, one on top of the other. A ziggurat. It looks a little bit like a pyramid. It also looks a little bit like the pyramids in Central and South America. Can you guys remember who else came from Ur of the Chaldees? It was Abraham, who came from Ur of the Chaldees. All right. What else have we got? Reed houses. So they made boats from reeds. Reeds from the riverbank were used to build houses and barns in which to store food and keep animals. That's pretty interesting. Oh, look, there's the city of Susa again. And what about up here? They have a lot of cities that end with the name Tepe. I wonder what that's about. The Zagros Mountains. Okay. Let's read about the city of Ur. Oops, I skipped too far again. The city of Ur. Founded around 3000 BC, the city of Ur was Mesopotamia's main port. Trade passed through it from the Persian Gulf and as far away as India. The city became so rich and powerful from trade that after 2112 BC, its king, Ur-Nammu, ruled an empire that dominated Mesopotamia for more than 100 years. We know a lot about the city from the fabulous objects that were recovered from its royal cemetery, including the standard of Ur above. A decorated sounding box for a musical instrument. Look how beautiful that is. Can you imagine that was made 5,000 years ago? It shows people bringing animals and goods to a banquet, musicians playing, and figures drinking. Let's get a close-up. Guess that's as close up as it gets. All right. Down here we have trading ships, a trading ship on its way to Bahrain, Oman, and India. Remember how it talked about they would trade? All right, now we're going to skip ahead a few pages to page 15 and 16 and talk about ancient Europe. All right, farming began in southeastern Europe during the Neolithic Age. So that's kind of like the Turkey area, southeastern Europe. During the Neolithic Age around 6000 BC, and it slowly spread throughout Europe over the next 2000 years. Farming allowed people to settle down and build houses and villages to live in. But the real advance came with the use of copper, bronze, and then iron. These metals could be made into tools and weapons, as well as items such as jewelry and other ornamental or ceremonial objects. In many places, chiefs and other important people were buried in megalithic, that means giant stone, tombs, with beautiful offerings to the gods next to them. People built massive circles and rows of standing stones and circular earth structures known as henges. Some of these line up with the sun and the stars at certain times in the year, indicating a detailed knowledge of the calendar and astronomy. Okay, let's zoom in. We'll zoom in on England and Ireland first. We heard about Skara Brae in one of our other readings. Here's Stonehenge. Here's Newgrange. The earth mound in Newgrange was built to cover the tomb of a chieftain and his family. Here are rows of standing stones. Here's what it says about Stonehenge. The 2 rings of Stonehenge, probably used for religious ceremonies, were erected between 2800 and 1600 BC. This is Scandinavia up here. And it says a Bronze Age burial mound. Here's a picture of a shield. It says Celtic weapons. The Celts made elaborate shields and other items out of bronze. We're missing, on this screenshot, we're missing a nice picture of a pot. But it says graveyard goods. Heavily decorated drinking cups were buried in graves with their owners. Karnak. Karnak is the biggest megalithic site in Europe, with more than 3,000 stones standing in rows. We still do not know what it was used for. Mining tin. Tin was a valuable metal because it was used to make bronze. Here is one of the tin mines at Alcalá. Some of the others, remember, were in England. Elaborate tombs at Los Millares. Earth mounds covered the tombs of ancient chieftains. This is Spain. This area is France. In the Loire Valley now there are many castles, but that was not the case back then. Okay, here we have a text box about making bronze. Smiths mixed together hot tin and copper in a mold to make bronze, a stronger metal. Oh, this is interesting. Lake villages. Bronze Age peoples often built villages off the shores of a lake for defense. That's kind of like Lake Town in the Hobbit story. Others used houses raised up on wooden pillars. Long houses for people and animals is another kind of house. Here is a picture of people milking goats. The Carpathian Mountains. Here's a picture of somebody cutting down trees for timber and fuel. Here's a Greek cargo ship. Where do you think it was going? Here is a picture of someone collecting amber for jewelry. In our other book, it said that the Scandinavians from up in this area would collect amber and then trade it to others for the metal they needed. Do you remember? All right, this is an interesting picture. Life at home. Wood was plentiful, so most people in Europe lived in wooden longhouses. The ruins of these houses are very rare, and we know very little about what they were like inside. The exception is on the treeless Orkney Islands. That's over here, Skara Brae, north of Scotland, where around 3000 BC at Skara Brae, the people built an entire village out of stone. The houses were covered with stone and turf and contained stone cupboards, stone fireplaces, stone beds, and stone boxes. All right, I think that covers this page. Thanks for listening to another Daddy Cast. Hope you enjoyed it.